Hi, this is a short intro into schema core processes. As the name suggests, these are processes that live within our schemas. This is opposed to local processes or remote processes. You'll receive videos on these in due course. So let's get started. You'll see on this page in front of you that we've got a test page in Anki Plus, which just contains a group element and a button. Now, this is all schema driven, and when I click this button, it'll kick off a schema core process that'll just do a console log into the console here. So if I click that, you'll see we get hello world there on the console. And if you look carefully, you'll see it's coming from the console action system. I can click that multiple times, it'll fire off. So let's go and have a look how we achieve that. So if I come over to Anki Plus, I'll see that I'm in this test page is folder. I'm not going to spend too much time here. You should know this sort of structure by now. We have a schema file, we have a JavaScript, we have an HTML. Now if I expand the schema file, the first thing we'll look at is just to show you, we've got a group element, which contains a button, and it has an ID of my group. But this is the interesting line here. It calls process 0. Now you've probably from previous videos familiar with variables, familiar with data sets, familiar with body, and all the content here. And if you've worked with the old process system, you'll be familiar with this line. But if you haven't, don't worry. It's very straightforward. So the two new elements for those of you who haven't worked with processes before are the process entry point and the core processes, the whole point of this video. So when I click this button, as it's linked to process 0, the architecture behind will call into the process structure within the schema. So it'll look for ID process with ID of 0. So if I expand that, here we see process with ID of 0. I've just given it a title there for our demo. Importantly, it's a type API. This tells us to use the new process engine, and the location is core processes, meaning in the schema, as opposed to local or remote. And where I want to start my process from is the show message process. So now we can expand the core processes object. And there you'll see, here's the show message process that links to there. Now all processes have steps. That's just the structure that we follow. So any process that you define, so that remember this is a process, and all processes have steps. And right now we only have one step, which is the start step. All processes need to have a start step. And inside the start step, the only action that I'm performing right now is to do a type. The system is console and the action is log, passing through the argument of message hello world. Now you won't use this in production, but this is just a very simple example to show you how easy it was to create a initial core process that just does a console log. So if we follow through it one more time, from process through to the defined process on the schema, which then calls the core processes show message, core processes show message, and kicks off the start step, console log. So when you click there, you get an update. Now just to make our example a bit more interesting, I can show you that you can add a step on. So then let me just create this example. I have some demo code here so I don't have to spend the whole time typing. we want to have an add button step. It's going to be type DOM. Okay, Copilot has added a whole lot of stuff for us. I'm just going to fix what it got wrong. So our action in the DOM action system is create element. The args are actually tag name. Button is correct. I'm just going to copy the other parts. So the text content of the button, I want to be hello. And the parent element that will contain this newly created button will be my group. So if I search the schema, my group appears down here in the ID. So that's why you've got the hash meaning ID, my group, and then I want to target its a space. I want to look at the attribute slot body. Just to show you, okay, you guys should know this, but just to be clear, that means inside the Pragma group, slot body is where I want to put this new button. So if I look at that again, I think we are ready to fire off this additional step. It will be, remember, processes flow in sequence through the steps from top to bottom, unless there's some conditional logic changing the flow. But there is a problem right now in this process. Some of you have spotted it already, but what you need is some way to tell it where to go next. Even Copilot knows that, but it's not quite right. What it needs is a next step, and add button is the step I want to call. So if we look now, it'll come into start console log, and it'll call add button, come down. So I think we're ready to try that out. Let's have a look. Just going to refresh to get the new schema. Okay, now when we click, we should see not just a console log, but also a button. And that's what we get. Yeah, that's the basic intro to core processes. I mean, you can do all kinds of things with core processes. Basically, the sky's the limit. I'll just show you quickly an example in OnKey of one. You don't need to understand it. It's just to show you that, we can do all kinds of things. There I'm doing a get element and then emitting an event. So obviously you've got all these process variables and things you can reach. So dollar will usually be followed to some location in the process memory, either context or process data or the schema. But as you can see, you can do all kinds of things with core processes. Here we're setting an object's property values. Moving on to a load function. So, like I say, the sky's the limit with these core processes. You can call any action system on the process API, and there are a set of actions you can call in the OnKey client. So this concludes basically the video, but for those of you who want to stick around, I can show you just briefly how we get into this action system. So for instance, if I put a breakpoint here and click here, you'll see that we came from a run step, which then calls into the perform function of the console actions. It'll go down and then fetch actual values for the console action, and then it will actually get the values if you've got variables stored in there, and then log out what you've. This is the actual call being made to the JavaScript console API, obviously. So that's how it flows right the way through. You'll see here, if you look at the call stack, it started off by running the process, first of all performing the process, running the process API, then running the call process, and then going into the whole run step, all the way down to log. And you get your console log. So you can come and inspect what happens, just for learning's sake. The more you dig around and figure out, the more you'll learn and the faster you'll learn. Now I suggest going and recreating this scenario on your side and maybe adding a bit of other additional functionality to it. So go and look at, for example, the process API repo. You can, for example, go and have a look at, start off with a simple action system, like the one we've already just used, DOM actions. Go and have a look. You can try maybe setting an attribute on one of the buttons after the fact, or on another element, getting an attribute, setting a style. Yeah, just the more you try and use the actions and the systems, the more familiar they'll become, and the more natural it'll become for you. Thank you for watching this video.